Hey Scott, it's David. I thought I'd give this a shot to kind of show you my thought process on this and some of the stuff that I do to configure some of the controls. Some of the more, this first solution I was thinking is sort of advanced. It's something that um, comes from working with the DVA for the past year. She came up with this idea of valid values and kind of drove me into this solution. So what I generally do is I'll play around with the views and I'll load the data. I'll play around with loading the data and just running it to make sure the controls are populating. So in this one, I like to create an item view, and then if there's a list view that's tied to it, I'll try to play with those back and forth. But what I did on this one is on the item view for the radio buttons. Basically what it is, on the rules side, it just is, it's a list that has the capability of being populated. So when you drop a radio button control in, a rule is automatically generated. And then the cool part about this one is the value part is I created that extra column that was called the question set. So basically it was that unique ID. I think there's a possibility of this being kind of dynamic, but what I did is I statically said when this view is initialized, just populate question 1. You could do some filter and sorting that is also a possibility, but I would just stick with this one for this solution. I'll show you another possibility in a little bit that might be easier, but and then this, what I did is that question set data label. Again, I'm just kind of throwing this all together really fast, but you're going to use this as a data source, and I just said that I'm just statically populating with a 1 right now, just so I could use it as, on the form level as something that is a possibility of me just saying grab this ID and insert it into my other list. But the layout's pretty simple. Something I wanted to show you that I thought was cool later on is all these controls have the possibility of styling. You're going to have to, how I just messed up the data label, some of this can be, you can hit the enter key. You can manipulate these around. If you highlight one of your controls, you can come over here to styles, hit the ellipse, and then you can actually bold and change color. I thought this was pretty cool when I finally started playing with this. I like the size because, in my opinion, it's not really, the defaults aren't really all that great. So you can manipulate that on any control. But on this finished product, when you run it, it populates that first list set of questions, and then that's my static value. Let's see. So then the answers, I just created a secondary SharePoint item for the answers. Let me move this over a little bit. So I just created another custom list that there's a possibility of you just loading it here. You could do it here. I don't know how you work. You could. I was thinking originally here, but I would like this list to be sort of dedicated to my questions. Basically you can't see it on the side, but this is my list set 1, list set 2, and list set 3, or question set. And then I created that secondary one for the user answers. And basically all I did was I went into K2 settings after I created these two lists, and then I went into K2 Smart Object Site Lists and Libraries, and I selected these two items to be created as a smart object. The smart object, all it is it's an interface. It's a container that allows us to work with whatever the back end is. You could do this on, you could create the smart objects against SQL, you could create them against SharePoint. They're great, they have great functionality. And so basically what happened here was I created those two list items, and of course a ton of other stuff came through, but under my portal, my SharePoint portal, they came in as the question and answer type smart objects, and all I did was I dragged them and dropped them down into this smart object folder so that I could use both of those basically smart objects. And when I created these views, the very first thing I did was I right clicked and I said design me a view. For the item view, the items, the ones that you've already been creating, I created that one first and kind of organized the controls, and then I right clicked. I created this list view for this one, but I decided to go with that secondary custom list, so I dragged that new smart object down, right clicked it, and I just created a list item off of it. So essentially what it does, by default it's going to list everything. What I will generally do if I'm putting the list in and it's specific to something, I will come in a general and I'll deselect this, call this method when the form loads. It helps me take more control over it, that when on the form level, when I'm ready to call it and put values in that are related to just that object, that's when I call the get list, and I'll kind of show that to you. That was kind of a cool thing. These list views are very customizable. Basically, if you come over it took me a while to kind of figure out, but if you come over the column, you get more controls that'll pop up. What I'll do is if I want to center it, I'll control it from here. You can actually control it by clicking on the body, and you can come into styles and you can do some customization, almost like the fonts and stuff like that as well. You can drag and drop controls over the top of this list view. It adds more functionality. I don't like the double decimal. I don't know why it does that, so I'll generally come into the body and style, and that the two decimal places is kind of silly. It happens, I think, when you by default, if you are tied into a SharePoint item, K2 thinks that everything's a decimal for some silly reason. So I'll come in and modify the style, the number, and I'll set it to 0. I don't want to see two decimals. I just want to see basically just a whole number. So this was my view. There should be no rules tied to this. I kind of like it like that. This is already tied to it, so it knows when we go to the form, it knows if I say I want to do a get list, it already knows the methods behind this smart object, and in that sense that's pretty cool. So moving into the form, I created a new form under this directory, and then I dragged the item view over here and then the list view over to here. So basically what I did is I said, this is also a semi cool thing, that if you highlight your view and you click on rules, you'll see the rules that are tied to the view. So I said that if this control on the form level, I said if this control is clicked, I want to populate that with the next question set. So I think I'm not sure if I clicked. Nope, that was the wrong one. That was the executed. You'll see the rules for if it's sort of grayed out, blacked out, and you can't control it, it's on the view level. So I added the rule for the control to be clicked. So I basically said when the radio button list is changed. So what I did is I said I did like view level events, which is a great way to control on the form. You want any control you throw on any of your views, and then you put into a form, you can control them via the view methods or the form. So I drug this, or I clicked this and sent this down and said, when a control on a view raises event, that's populated here. You could click on this and you can control any of you can activate any of your controls on that view. And I said basically that radio button list is changed. It's going to fire all these in sequence. The sequence is sort of important. I will generally, this one I said I wanted I wanted you to take the controls on that view, and I want to populate that user answer list with items. So I said, take that smart object that I created, and I want to do a create method on it. I'm going to drag in the answer. I want to drag in the question set label, which was static before, which kind of in this sense is kind of a pain. And then the system value of the user, the current username. You could add in the fully qualified name of the user, the display name, whatever your system will accept. You can send in the email, that person's manager, which is pretty cool. So this is kind of what that other list view is. I'm kind of filtering off the username because in some sense it could be unique, but on your end you could do it a different way. I said so I wanted to transfer data because I made that data label a static 1. I said, well, okay, now give me the static label of 2 because I'm using that in this create method. I said pretty much give me that label, that question set data label, and populate that question number. So that's the only part I don't really like about this. I think there's a possibility of that being more dynamic. So I said create that item in that list, transfer 2 to that data label because I want to use it for the next question set, and then populate the radio button list with a 2. I want to see the next question set. So I'm basically filtering that control by the question set, and then I want to get the list on that other view. So this is what I'm talking about. Is I said all these are actions, by the way. I don't know if I don't think I described that. So basically what I did here is I did a smart object method for that user answer. I want to populate that next list, and then I wanted to transfer, I accidentally clicked that. I wanted to transfer the data to that data label on that view. I wanted to populate that radio button list. So what I'll do is if I can't remember where it is, I'll do some of the keywords. The keywords are usually in black. Populate, transfer. So this one is what I've used this one quite a bit. Populate list control with data. There's a few list controls, but I think your checkbox list is a list control that you were trying to use before. And then because I filtered that control by the question set, I can pass in a number to it, and I'll kind of show you that because I'll backtrack and show you that a little bit better. And then I said give me a view method. So hopefully this all isn't too confusing, but because I set that view up originally with the smart object, the user answer smart object, it knows that get list is tied to it. So I said give me a view method. I want the view of user answers, and then there's a ton of things. I really like this. I've used quite a few of these, but so because of the sequence that we're running in here, I said basically when I'm done with all the data loads and transferring the data labels, that I want to get the list for the user answer, and I want you to populate it with right now, just to experiment with this, I wanted to populate if I'm the person that's taking the survey. So I said system value, so I just use that again. I said current user, and I dropped the name in. You could filter when a get list is a pretty powerful function. You could drop in any of these variables, and you'd be good to go. So let me stop this video and we'll move on to the next